As much as he cared about amusing, engaging, and educating the American sportsman, thus expanding his readership, he gradually abandoned any pretense of comprehensiveness with respect to geography or subject matter. In every issue there still would be stories on, say, black bass in Lake Champlain, rambles through Newfoundland, or Minnesota duck shooting, but more and more Forest and Stream focused on the regions of the country Grinnell knew personally and the issues that he himself cared about most. Once he became interested in Indians, Forest and Stream became interested in Indians, though not all Indians, just the tribes he'd had contact with. Over the years, readers learned a lot about the Blackfeet and Cheyennes, next to nothing about Indians of the Southwest. When Grinnell grew concerned about Yellowstone, Yellowstone became an obsession of the journal. Yosemite or the Grand Canyon got shorter shrift. And so it went. Some of this favoritism could be attributed to limited resources. Every week, Grinnell, with the help of managing editor Charles Reynolds, worked to fill an issue with freelance submissions and field reports from a stable of irregular columnists who, though they may have been seasoned as sportsmen, were unpolished as journalists. Necessarily, the editors had to write a good deal of the copy themselves, and in doing so, they tended to cover the ground they knew best. New voices in the field of outdoor writing were always welcome, of course, provided they held to Grinnell's high standards of veracity and sportsmanship. In the issue of July 2, 1885, under the heading New Publications, Grinnell offered a review of Hunting Trips of a Ranchman, written by 26-year-old New York Assemblyman Theodore Roosevelt, who was in his third term representing New York City. The book was printed on large, rich pages with spacious margins, handsome engravings, and a gold-stamped cover in a limited edition of 500. Luxurious books upon the better class of field sports are certainly more highly appreciated now than they used to be, Grinnell wrote admiringly. He likewise complimented the author's reputation as a public servant. The excellent work which he's accomplished at Albany shows him to be, if nothing more, a person of exceptionally well-balanced mind and calm, deliberate judgment, Grinnell opined. The Roosevelt family, well-to-do and philanthropic, was far more deeply established in New York society than the Grinnells, none of which kept Grinnell from critiquing the young Roosevelt's merits as a hunter, rancher, and naturalist. I knew enough of Theodore Roosevelt, if only from his course in the New York legislature, to feel that in all that he wrote he wanted to know the truth, Grinnell would explain after Roosevelt's death. As the 1885 review continued, Grinnell declared with a note of avuncular condescension, "His experience of the Western country is quite limited, but this very fact in one way lends an added charm to his book. Where Mr. Roosevelt details his own adventures, he is accurate, and tells his story in simple, pleasant fashion, which at once brings us in sympathy with him." But, Grinnell added, Roosevelt still had a great deal to learn. "We are sorry to see that a number of hunting myths are given as fact, but it was, after all, scarcely to be expected that with the author's limited experience he could sift the wheat from the chaff and distinguish the true from the false." Theodore Roosevelt was not one to suffer a pat on the head or a cuff on the ear. Upon reading Grinnell's review in Forest and Stream, he called at Grinnell's office, red in the face from the midsummer heat and with his famous teeth bared. He was surely a Forest and Stream reader by then, and ought not to have been surprised by the confident demeanor of the slim, pipe-smoking editor who greeted him and calmly announced that he was the author of the unsigned review. "He at once saw my point of view," Grinnell said of the meeting, "and after we had discussed the book and the habits of the animals he had described, we passed to the broader subject of hunting in the West." They indeed had a lot in common. Like Grinnell, Roosevelt had grown up in New York, although in Roosevelt's case he had been born in the city proper, near Union Square. He too had witnessed Abraham Lincoln's funeral parade. Severely asthmatic, by his own admission a sickly boy with no natural body prowess, young Teedy was bullied by boys of greater strength and stamina. He found escape in books, including those of James Fenimore Cooper and John James Audubon. None made a more lasting impression than the adventures of Mayne Reid. His brother Eliot was more beloved by their mother and was the better natural athlete in the family. Trips to the country provided scant relief for Roosevelt's shortness of breath, but aroused his curiosity for wild things and wild places. Birds were a beguiling abstraction until he turned 14 and was fitted for eyeglasses. At the same time, he was also presented with his first shock.